Hello, my name is Michael Lambert, and today I want to talk a little bit about one or two things that have been happening this week, and I'd like to talk also about the general overall situation and how things are progressing and what the future holds, I think, particularly with regard to Brexit. Now, it's been an exciting week this week. Little Rishi, he's kind of at a meltdown, really. I think he's under pressure. I think he's going a bit loopy. He's been running around like some sort of madman with a machete, slashing all sorts of things he's done this week. He made a video. He made 2 videos for Twitter showing him slashing stuff. Some of the things he slashed the tax on eating meat. Completely slashed it. It's gone. He said himself, gone. I've got rid of it. It was never there in the first place. It got gone. He slashed the tax, the extra tax we have to pay when you go on holiday. You don't. It doesn't exist. Never has existed. He slashed it. Having to have 7 bins to sort your waste in. 7 bins. He slashed that. Slashed it. Gone. Dinosaurs in Regent Street. Slashed them. Gone. Completely bonkers. You know, I think he's a fragile little man, and he gets very irritable. He doesn't like being questioned very much. I think he thinks it's a bit humiliating to be questioned by interviewers, and he got very tetchy with Nick Robinson the other morning, and even lied at one point, and you kind of wonder what he's doing it for. I mean, he clearly is not up to the job. Anyhow, also last week he decided to row back on our commitments to net zero. I think he got a little bit confused, poor chap. I think when the Tories won the Uxbridge by-election over what was thought to be because of the ultra low emission zone that was being introduced by the Labour Mayor of London, I think he got confused and thought that ULEZ was somehow related to climate change. Completely different. ULEZ was all about cleaner air. Climate change is about climate not catching fire. But anyway, he sort of thought, well, I've got to row back because it seems quite popular, and he'll make him popular if he rows back on his global warming commitments. But in fact, what happened was he made everybody furious, everybody mad. All the environmentalists, the motor companies, because they want certainty and they never get it from this clown, all this mess. And on other news regarding climate change from last week, Tesco's are now buying meat, apparently. They made a commitment not to in 2019. They're buying meat from Brazil, where they're chopping down the rainforest in order to rear this meat. And we're now importing palm oil from Malaysia, where they're chopping down the rainforest to grow palm oil. It's illegal throughout Europe. But now we're free. We can buy it. So to hell with everybody else. Gillian Keegan, I think I might have mentioned last week, she's said how the children are all happy. Children whose schools are falling out, they're very happy because they're in Portugal. Probably not as happy as her and her £32 million office refit. There was a United Nations General Assembly in New York last week to discuss global warming and so on. Sunak didn't want to show his face because obviously he's backtracking and he found it embarrassing and so on. So as he always does, you know, he got out of it. He's forever arranging things. Like last week, he had Parliament close on Tuesday so as to avoid PMQs. Anyway, he sent little Oliver Dowden. Oliver Dowden, this sort of wishy-washy non-entity who is in fact the Deputy Prime Minister. Now, Dowden apparently went with about six colleagues, 6 or 7 of them all together, and had they gone business class on British Airways to New York return, it would cost about £4,000 each, so it was been something like £30,000, maybe a little bit more to go. But little Ollie ideas above his station. He didn't want to go on a commercial airline. Oh, no. So they took that big plane, that great big thing, 160-seater, for about 7 people. The last time it went to New York and back, it cost £345,000. 6 people. But it doesn't matter because we're paying for it. It doesn't matter. The taxpayers' money, it doesn't matter straight away. We've got plenty of money. Nobody's short of money, are they? And you look at this out of touch rabble, this utter shambles of a government. Sunak completely out of control, got no idea what he's doing. And I was thinking the other day, I was remembering that of the cabinet, I think I mentioned this before, of the cabinet, 30 members, 20 voted Remain. And of the other 10, I think, as I said before, the other 10, 5 of them are children of immigrants who absolutely detest foreigners and don't want any more immigrants coming here. But he's incredibly proud of Brexit and the opportunities it's brought. He hasn't told me the opportunity, he hasn't said what the opportunities are yet, but he's incredibly proud of it. I think he's just biding his time now. I think he knows he's going to lose the election. He'll be off to, what'll happen is he'll lose the election. He'll stay in his seat for about a month, and then he'll be off to California. Off to California, where he and his wife have given $3 million to a school to build a sort of computer centre. It's actually called the Murphy Sunak Computer Centre. And in this beautiful school, absolutely beautiful, wonderful manicured gardens and fountains and fantastic scenery, all beautiful building, absolutely wonderful. $78,000 a year fees apparently. That's presumably where his daughters are going to go year after next, as soon as they leave. So he didn't care really. We haven't got to worry about poor old Rishi, how he's going to manage. He'll get by. But you look at the other side. You look at Starmer. And I know whenever I speak about Starmer, I get into trouble. People get very cross if I criticise him. But he's even more in favour of Brexit and making Brexit work than Sunak. What I can't understand with Starmer, he must look at Cameron, May, Johnson, Truss, Sunak. Every one of them has ruined their careers and their reputations on Brexit. Every one of them has failed because Brexit can only fail. And he wants to have a go. Can't wait to have a go. Drive the sinking ship. And as far as the front bench, the shadow cabinet, all 30 of them, every single one of them voted to Remain. So you have a government, 2/3 of whom voted Remain, an opposition, 100% of whom voted Remain, and 2 leaders fighting to get Brexit done. Brexit, which everybody can see is never going to be a success. Just let's take a moment to have a look at what Brexit has brought us. Businesses are in trouble. This is in less than 3 years. It was less than 3 years since we actually finally left. Businesses are in a terrible trouble. Really struggling, so many businesses. And remember that every time a business goes down, it weakens other businesses, their suppliers and so on. So there's this constant drag down once businesses start going under. If you're a business and it depends upon discretionary spending, in other words, the money that people got left over when they've paid all their bills, you're really, really in trouble. In restaurants and pubs and bars and so on, you're really, really going to struggle. Small and medium-sized businesses cannot export to the EU anymore because if anyone in the EU buys from somebody in the UK, they immediately, when the goods arrive, are faced with a whole load of paperwork. They pay duty, VAT, pay customs entry charges, pay extra transport charges. It is much, much, much more complicated, infinitely more complicated for somebody in the EU to buy from the UK as opposed to buy from anywhere within the EU. So exports on the part of small and medium-sized companies just collapsed. And you look at inward investment, which is very important. We're always talking about all these companies are going to come and invest and so on. We've got a Prime Minister who has a father-in-law, who has a friend who owns Tata. I'm sure there's no conflict of interest at all. So what we do, our taxpayers, we give £500 million to the friend of the Prime Minister's father-in-law to open a battery factory in Somerset. And then we give another £500 million not to close a steel plant in South Wales and only to sack 3,000 people. Then we give £600,000, taxpayers' money, to BMW to make cars in wherever it is they're making them. People aren't coming to this country to invest. Why would they? We're surrounded with paperwork, inconveniences. We're a sinking economy anyway. Who wants to be in an economy which is going down? And when you look at everything else, you look at the cost of living, look how many people are struggling, how many people have trouble paying their mortgages, how many people have borrowed money or are in debt and don't know how they're going to pay it and they're going to go have all sorts of mental issues. Look at the price of inflation here is higher than almost anywhere else in Europe. Look at the cost of food, cost of fuel, gas, electricity, water, trains. Trains are twice the price they are in Europe because we're subsidising European train companies who actually own them. Taxes going up, everything going up. Look at the NHS. 7 million people waiting for treatment. That's 10% of the more than 10% of the population. More than 1 in 10 people are waiting for treatment from the NHS. How can an economy function like that? Millions of those people could otherwise work if they get treatment, but they can't sit at home waiting. Look at the immigration service. A few years ago, we had 7,000 people waiting for asylum. Now, 170,000. Look at the Bibi Stockholm farce. Look at the police. Metropolitan Police, 34,000 policemen. 1,000 of them are under investigation for one offence or another. Look at crime. I've mentioned this before. Shoplifting. Everybody knows now if you want to become a shoplifter, there is no reason why you shouldn't. Nothing to stop you. Staff aren't going to stop you. Security aren't going to stop you. They just accept that it's going to happen. You know, in time, before very long, shops are going to start putting up grills and they're going to let one person in at a time. Because there's nothing to stop you going in. You can go to John Lewis and just take a whole handful of stuff. No one's going to stop you. And that will spread and spread and spread. The more people get squeezed, the more people are in trouble, the more people can't make ends meet, the more people can't feed their children, they're going to resort to theft. And it won't just be shoplifting, it's going to be housebreaking, mugging. Everything you look at, everything. Councils going bust. Birmingham City Council gone bust. Bankrupt. And what happens? Michael Gove sends one of his civil servants up. And what are they going to do when they get there? They're going to make cuts. Reduce services. And we all know there are dozens and dozens of local authorities all over the country which are on the verge of bankruptcy. Now this has all happened, this situation, this fiasco, this collapse, this chaos has all happened since we left the EU. It's not all, I wouldn't for a moment say it's all directly related to that, but leaving the EU has so much weakened us. It's weakened national finances. Look at our borrowing, record borrowing, enormous interest we're paying. And the sad thing is, and this is really what is so important, there's no way it's going to turn around. There's no way in a year's time we'll be saying, "Oh, it was bad last year, wasn't it? But at least it's getting better now." It's not. This is a downward spiral. This is a self-perpetuating spiral because as businesses start getting trouble, as businesses start going under, as people start getting laid off, there's less. They're dragging other businesses down. You can't keep squeezing people indefinitely. And I think when people see all these quite rich people, all these PPE people, and they see things like Dowden with his 345,000 return trip to New York, and they see Gillian Keegan's office, and all these other examples which we hear all the time. They see them flaunting this wealth. People are getting pretty angry, and I think people being these days sod it. We're not, unfortunately, sort of country where we have organised protests as they do very obviously in France. But people, I think, are getting to a stage where they've had enough, a lot of them. So we're left with an approaching election, which is going to be in the next year or so. Sunak leading what must be the worst government ever. I mean, a government of complete and utter cretins, incompetence beyond belief. I mean, just look at them. And he's, as I said, he's very proud of Brexit, very proud of the opportunities Brexit has brought. Doesn't see any disadvantages. Sunak, whenever he's interviewed, always any criticism, worse everywhere else, worse in France, worse in Venezuela. Would be worse under Labour. And as we know, the government is 30 members, 20 of them, 60% voted Remain. 60% of the government. They lied to Boris Johnson, they changed their minds, but they're all Remainers. They go on television saying all these opportunities that come from Brexit, they know there aren't any. In fact, they look around and they must say to themselves, well, I was absolutely right when I voted Remain. This is madness, this is crazy. And on the other side, we have Keir Starmer. Now, I know I always get criticised if I say anything negative about Starmer, but please bear with me. Please just listen to what I got to say. Starmer is more enthusiastic about Brexit than Sunak. I mean, he's fanatical about it. He's been saying for 2 years now, under his leadership, we will never, ever go back into the customs union, single market, accept free movement, or over his dead body rejoin the EU, or try to. Never. Last week, Rachel Reeves said there was no way in the next 50 years we would ever even consider rejoining the EU. They look around, they see all this obvious catastrophe that has ensued following Brexit. This list I've just given you, the mess we're in, every department of government is in mess. The economy is in a mess. They look around at all this and say, oh no, we've get on with it, make a success of it. And every one of the shadow cabinet, all 30 of them, every one of them voted to Remain. But they've got to get on and make a success of it. I thought the other day, it's a bit like this. Supposing one day Keir Starmer and his wife, they're invited to lunch with some friends in Brighton. And so they set off. They're looking forward to a nice lunch. It's going to be a nice day out and so on. And they enjoy the company of these people. And then off they go, full of optimism. And after a while, Keir can't quite remember the way. So he says, oh, I better ask somebody the way. I don't really know. I'm a bit lost. And so he thinks, well, I'll ask somebody who hasn't got a clue. I'll ask this gang of children on the street corner over there. And so he goes and asks these children. Well, they don't really know, but they sort of know. And they say, oh, we'll go this way, that way. So he goes off, drives off. An hour later, he's seeing signs for Nottingham and Derby. He realises he's going up there. He's going up the M1. His wife says to him, okay, we're going the wrong way. We just can't go back. Can't go back. Yeah, but we wanted to go lunch. It's the other way. That's what we were after. No, can't go back. Those children told us it's this way. And on he drives. Driving the wrong way. Knowing you're driving the wrong way. Knowing you've made a mistake. Can't turn back. It's beyond bonkers. And this is what I want to say particularly because I know there'll be people who will already be writing comments about what his motives are and what he's really got in mind. And what people say, whenever I criticise him, I get lots and lots and lots of comments, vast majority supporting what I'm saying. People who say, I voted for Labour all my life, but I'm not going to vote for Starmer. People like me, for example, I haven't voted Labour all my life, but I could never vote for anybody who is either deluded or dishonest enough to say they're going to make a success of Brexit, because I know you cannot make a success of Brexit. Brexit is, by its very nature, a failure. And so what people say, they'll say two things. The first they'll say is that, listen, Sunak, Starmer, he's got to say that. He's got to say that to get elected. See? Because he's got to get the votes of the red wall seats and he mustn't upset the Daily Express. Now, the people in the red wall seats are an ever-shrinking minority. It's now down to somewhere in the 20% somewhere of people who still think Brexit was a good idea. These are people who are not the brightest. These are people who read with their fingers and mouthing the words. They can only cope with the headlines on the Daily Express. Not the brightest people. These are people who, like Michael Caine, the multi-millionaire actor who said he would rather be poor than have to take orders from people in Brussels. And that's what all these red wall people think. We've taken back control, we've got sovereignty. The fact that they can barely afford to live, the fact that they are the people who will suffer most as a result of Brexit, the fact that they will never again in their lives be able to afford a holiday or to eat in a restaurant. Doesn't matter because we've taken back control. If you say, well, what does that mean? No idea. Absolutely no idea. And those are the people he's said to be going after. There have been a few polls lately. In The Sun, there was a poll, and it showed that people asked, well, how would you vote in a new referendum now? 64% said they would vote to rejoin. 36% say they vote to leave or stay out. In a poll taken for Peston of 18 to 25-year-olds, the people whose lives, futures we're trashing, 86% of them said that they would vote to rejoin the EU. So this going after this tiny, tiny little sad group of miserable people. And of course there are the few, the sort of the Bill Cashes and the nutters, the people who just hate foreigners. But on the whole, it's poorer people who are suffering most of Brexit. Going after them, Starmer is alienating an awful lot of people. He's alienating people like me and thousands of others like us who just cannot vote for his policy. Now, the other thing that people say is, and this I've heard from people on the radio, people on YouTube, all sorts of people, they'll say, well, this is all part of a cunning plan, you see. It's a plan. It's a strategy. And the way it's going to work is this, that Starmer will get elected, and in his first term, well, he won't do much then. Regarding Europe, that is. In his second term, he'll then start to talk about going back into the single market. And then maybe in his third term, perhaps his fourth term, he'll then take us back into the EU, because that's what he really wants to do. What he's doing, he's lying to people to get their votes. He doesn't believe that he wants to stay out. He's really saying over and over again to everybody, he's saying, never, ever, ever, oh, my dead body will we go back into the EU. But he doesn't mean it. He's saying that to get the votes. Now, the big flaw with this strategy is this. In a year's time, because things are just going to go on getting worse and worse and worse, things aren't going to turn around. Things are going to get much, much worse. By next year, this time, everything will have changed. He'll get elected, and he's going to have a mountain of problems to deal with. The NHS, the unions will all want higher pay rises. There's going to be trouble with everywhere you look. There's going to be problems. And he says in his first term he's going to make us the fastest, the most consistent growth in any economy in the G7. We're going to go past America and everybody. Doesn't say how. So during his first term, he's not going to have any time for that. Well, I'll tell you exactly what's going to happen. He'll get elected, and immediately the press, everybody's going to blame him for everything. Within a few months, everybody will have forgotten the Tories. Certainly within 5 years, they will do. And all the time, people will be saying, why haven't you sorted it out? You said you were going to sort it out. And towards the end, you'll start hearing that famous saying, the Tories are best. The Tories are best with the economy. Labour were never any good. Look at the mess they're making. He'll be out. One term. He'll go on that list I've just mentioned. Cameron, May, Johnson, Truss, Sunak, Starmer. People who failed because of Brexit. It's it's a huge mistake in my view. I think he's making a really, really, really big mistake. All he ever had to say right at the start was, we had a referendum, I accept the results, we must respect the results, but we have to review it from time to time. If people's views change, as they have done, people's views change, then we may have to reconsider. But no, he couldn't do that. And so, I think it's difficult. Because who do you vote for? I mean, the Liberals are saying, well, we don't want to go back in, but we want to try and get a better, closer relationship. Somebody has to stand up and say, loud and clear, Brexit was the biggest mistake we've ever made. It's wrecked our economy. It's wrecked our society. It's made us all poorer, more miserable, more anxious. It's ruining everything. We have to say stop. Turn around. Try and find a way back. Try and find a way back to the EU. It might take 10 years, it might take 20 years, it might take a very long time. But we have to do that because outside of the EU, there's no future for this country. We're not an important country. We don't make anything that people can't get somewhere else. We've got no special talents. We've got very low productivity, not particularly good education. We've got nothing to offer the world that's that special. We've surrounded ourselves, by turning our backs on the EU, we've surrounded ourselves with this massive, massive amount of bureaucracy. This obstruction to trade. And then again, Starmer goes off to the EU, goes off to Brussels. He says he's going to get rid of all this trade. He's going to make it easier for people to trade. Goes to Brussels. He says, don't want any EU customs union. No, don't want that. Single market. No, don't want that. Freedom of movement. No, we don't want your people coming in working and taking all our jobs, working in our hospitals as doctors. No, we don't want any of that. No, we don't. No, never ever. And we would never consider rejoining the EU. No. Better than you lot. But would it be okay if we send the boat people back to France? Could you agree to take them? And as soon as I get elected, I should want to cherry pick the agreement and see if there aren't some ways we can find some sort of advantage. It isn't going to happen. Our agreement is not going to be renegotiated. There's no reason why the EU should renegotiate. No interest for them whatsoever. It's pie in the sky. We have to come down to earth, be realistic. Outside the EU, we will never succeed. Anyway, that's what I think about it. If you watch this far, thank you very much. And I know a lot of this is what I've said before, but I think it needs repeating. And we just really got to wake up. We're better than this. So anyway, till next time. Thank you for watching and bye for now.